Okay, hi, we're here today with Professor Charles Maldarelli.
Close
Sorry
enough.
about that.
Yeah, that's
Close
good.
enough. At the CCNY Chemical Engineering Department. And Professor Maldarelli, thank you for joining us today. And
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
we'd like to learn a little bit about you, your work, your life, how you got here, and what your group is doing. So
Okay.
maybe start out with a little bit of story about your journey to arrive here.
Okay. Well, it's rather straightforward. I'm from New York City actually. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, in the Bay Ridge section of Brooklyn, and then grew up later on Long Island, and attended my undergraduate school was Columbia University, which is just 20 blocks down the road. And then I actually stayed at Columbia. I majored in chemical engineering and stayed at Columbia for a PhD. Working with Professor Rakesh Jain and a visitor from Bulgaria. His name was Ivan Ivanov. He was a professor from Sofia. And so I got my PhD working with those two in interfacial fluid mechanics. After graduating, I decided that I thought that teaching and doing research was what I was most interested in. And so I started looking at different schools, but wanted to stay in the New York area. And at the time, the CCNY had established the Levitch Institute for doing work in physical-chemical hydrodynamics. And I thought that that was interesting, and Levitch was the head of the institute. He had left the Soviet Union, had spent some time in Israel, but had been hired here to establish this institute. And since he was so well known, I thought it would be a good idea to work in his institute. And so I was hired directly to the Levitch Institute and then assigned to chemical engineering. And actually, I think my appointment remains the same, just like that. So I'm primarily a member of the Levitch Institute, but secondarily in chemical engineering. And I had some interaction with Levitch, but unfortunately then he passed away. And then Professor Akrabos, and later Mort Den, and then finally Jeff Morris have been head of the Institute. Most of the research that I've done in being here has been in fluid mechanics, interfacial fluid mechanics, surfactant science, with a lot doing with proteins absorbing at interfaces, different types of surfactant molecules absorbing, and I recently have some more work that I've been doing on recovery of rare earth elements with Raymond II, on carbon capture as part of a project with ExxonMobil, and monoclonal antibodies, and making large crystals of them with Jing Fan, who's a professor in mechanical engineering, and on emulsions and foams, which is another project that I have with Jing Fan in mechanical engineering. So that gives you a sort of overview of the kind of research I do. Usually I have a half a dozen graduate students at a time in my research group that I enjoy working with on various projects. I find that that number allows the students to collaborate among themselves and to sort of learn from each other. And there's sort of a synergism that occurs when you have a group of about that size. And I think that's always worked very well for them understanding and growing and getting their degree.
And they work both on modeling theory and experimental?
Yeah, I think
on the project?
It depends on the project. Some of my students do only theory and some do only experiments. but most of them do at least a little bit of both. And it just depends on the interests more of the student, that some just naturally would rather just do theory, and some more naturally would just rather do experiments. But I tried in each case to push to do something as well in between, because I think that's more interesting. And what happens when you graduate is you end up doing things that are not what you originally did, or you originally thought you would be interested in. So having as wide an exposure, I thought, is important. Yeah.
And your students, I'm sure they're a diverse group. How do they generally give you feedback about living in New York and working at this university?
I think, having also, gone to graduate school in New York, I know that it's a challenge to live here. It has a lot of great rewards, and I think those rewards sort of go over the challenges that a lot of times they have. But I've had students from a lot of different backgrounds: chemical engineering, chemistry, physics, mechanical engineering, and so forth. And I've had students that at first come right after getting their bachelor's degree, some that have worked a few years, some that have worked several years. So it's always been a very diverse group. But I think the lifeblood of our department, in terms of the graduate program, is the graduate students. And I always feel extremely fortunate to be able to work with them. They always have fresh ideas, and they are always very self-motivated. And I feel that my role is just to keep everybody on track, and just to see that they're going along the right way.
And when your students finish their degree, where you've had many graduates, I'm sure,
Yeah.
what type of positions and places do they wind up with? I'm sure it's a wide variety of things, right?
Well, I'm super proud of each one of them.
Yeah.
And they go into a number of areas. Some of them, when they come, have always wanted to work in industry. So I have students that have worked with me that graduate that work in personal care industry. I've had students working in the pharmaceutical industry. I have students that work at a time with like Exxon gas and oil and things, and areas like that. I've also had students that have gone on to faculty positions. So those students usually first do a postdoc for a few years, and then after doing a postdoc, they start looking for academic jobs. So I've had 3 or 4 of those, and as well a few postdocs that have also gone on to getting faculty jobs. So most of the time my research group, I don't usually have postdocs. I usually like to work directly with the graduate students, but at times I have had postdocs, and I find that also very rewarding. And they're the ones that typically want to go further on and get an academic appointment.
Okay, and do your students have an opportunity to work or take an apprenticeship or whatever in another institute or another country?
Yeah.
And
so we try, each student, I try to have some experience somewhere else in their 4 or 5 years here. So if I were to list them, say my current students, and give that as an example, Pedro Bertolini, he works on a carbon capture project, and he has spent time going back and forth with ExxonMobil that is funding the project. Nicole Donovan is working on a project on foams and emulsions and the factors that stabilize them, and she's done that research is being undertaken at the International Space Station, and she has gone back and forth to Texas when the experiments were actually done in space, and has collaborated with an implementation partner on getting the experiments ready for space. Luis Ortino Masas was working on the recovery of rare earth elements, and he has spent time in Argonne National Laboratories and at Brookhaven National Laboratories doing experiments on a neutron scattering. And then I've had the ones that are doing pure theory, so C.G. Subramaniam, and he's done an internship at Corning, New York over this past 6 months. So I think each of them has had time to spend away from their studies here, and whether it's related to their topics or it's different topics, I think it gives them a good experience.
Yeah, it helps them grow a lot, I think.
Yeah.
I've seen that. And it seems to be a fairly common thing in this department.
Yeah, I think more
to promote that.
Yeah, more so than maybe in some of the other departments. We totally feel that it's a part of their education to do that.
Yeah, that's very good. Okay, well, before we get to the end here, I just want to ask you, so if there's a student out there that's possibly considering coming to CCNY Chemical
Right.
Engineering, and maybe even thinking about working in your group, do you have some advice or some words for them that you'd like to add?
Well, we certainly welcome graduate students in our department. I've said that the lifeblood of our department is graduate students, and we're all a fairly congenial group, and I think if they are interested, they could write directly to any of the professors in the department, or they could write directly to me, and I would be very open. I usually take on average 1 student a year, and so my research funding is such that I usually can do that. And they can come, they can take a look at the laboratories and so forth. So, yeah.
Okay, sounds great. So in conclusion, do you have any final words or anything else you want to add?
Let's see, I think you would have a very nice time here at City College. I think you would interact with a number of different both faculty and graduate students in working here. I think we all get along very well together, and we all have the student success as our first and primary commitment. So I would encourage you to come.
Okay. Well, Professor Maldarelli, thank you for taking the time today to speak with us, and
Yeah.
we appreciate it. Thank you very much.